The interior of the Marson house is so dank with mold and fungus that one could say that the place is alive because every square inch of it has living bacteria sliming, and the house is dripping in its own kind of green pus like effluvia. And you'll see Ed Norton touching it and rubbing it off of his hand. It's almost like being in the entrails of something that is, it gives you the impression of it's decaying, but actually it's more alive than decaying. Mark Rabinowitz designed this interior, it was shot on a soundstage, and the pattern of the house from Gone with the Wind, the house that Rhett Butler and Scarlett O'Hara built in Atlanta. Not Terror, but the house they lived in while they were together. The choice of the dead animals and things is that if something gets in that house, something will kill it, unless it's a rat, and then they'll use it.
Please.
Here comes a little thing or a distraction of theirs, which was, I call a bing bang bong, where they all look at three different places. One is ding, one bang. So whatever it is, there's things all around them.
He's here.
Yes.
What have you done with Susan?
He's the vampire's keeper, the satellite. He's flesh and blood and killable. I mean, I guess there's sycophants in every profession, but he's described as the watchdog. That has somewhere, somehow, back 40 years ago probably, or like Renfield. He does have superhuman strength.
Aren't any such things as
Well, then what do you say is happening here? Something's happening here.
I don't know. Some kind of crazy.
You're scared.
Whatever it is, I'm not saying.
You're a constable here.
Was.
Running.
Running. And you're staying? You're staying.
This is like a 3 or 4 page scene, and the sun is actually going down. I got to this location at the end of the day and decided there's no way to get through this unless I find a way to do all of this in one take and one camera setup. I do like coverage. Reality sometimes causes you to make a change that actually makes something better. There were Ferndale people on the outside behind us that lived in the neighborhood. I think I did that 3 times to get it, and they would applaud every time. Harry Zuckman, who scored this film, won the Academy Award for a film, Song Without End. Was mainly chosen because both Richard Kobritz and myself love Bernard Herrmann. Although this thankfully doesn't sound like Jason and the Argonauts. Love Bernard Herrmann anyway, through Psycho and through the Hitchcock films. Harry Zuckman was his arranger. He knew what I was talking about, but would only go that far with it because he had a vision too. But the opening credits, you do hear those notes that are close.
Ben? Ben, Susan's in there.
This was first or second day of shooting when Mark Petrie runs out the door and you can see his shoulder hits David Soul in the eye. That was it for the day. I was sure he was going to have such a shiner and we wouldn't be able to shoot the next day, but Has some pretty magical people in the emergency department. I think I shot more sequences than we see here because I think it had to be shortened for the TV commercials. But watching it, it seems like there is something missing, not something that would ruin the film. There's some situation I feel I didn't see.
Ben!
Carol Sachs was an absolute great editor, a real cutting machine. He cut on this upright moviola and could go so fast that I could see cut together the next day of what I'd shot the day before. Carol, toward shooting the end of the picture, came in to the cutting room one morning and he was all bandaged and he'd fallen through the glass door of his shower. And I didn't know he was ill. He shot and cut a lot of film for nuclear testing. With a 16-millimeter camera, he would run into areas close enough to the center of where a bomb had gone off that the sand was turning into glass on his shoes. We lost him not that long after shooting the film. Wonderful man. In the book and in the screenplay, Stryker picks him up and hangs him on some antlers and horns on the wall. Oh, well, actually, it's in there. That wasn't in there originally. Fortunately, I didn't have to deal with it. It would have been Richard. I did this over and over. I remember James must have, I don't know, it must have been shot it 4 or 5 times, so David would have, over his shoulder, look, David must have unloaded and all 15 or 20 blanks into him. It didn't bother James. He's a trooper. It would have bothered me, actually. I would have flinched. I'm sure it wasn't the first time he did it. The root cellar, this is part of the basement. You go through the storm doors to get into this. The root cellar is connected to this. This particular room had limited requirements. Put the money into the coffin. It really weighed a lot, like 500 pounds, that you will see in a minute. This particular room had a purpose, and that was to see the sun go down in the window, to hurt Mark's ankle, and a space for them to pull the coffin out. Holy water kind of acts like a Geiger counter. That may be an addition to the vampire genre. That was a designed coffin. Anyway, you know what's going on. It's giving you a bonus. In the foreground, the vampire is being staked and staked good. Although in the background, something no one knows about except us, the audience. There is something really very bad going on. We had made a wax head of Barlow to try to disintegrate him. Had a hot air mover blow onto that to see his skin melt away, but it was experimental and it took so long to do. Speeding it up or nothing really worked, but that's fine. This was a difficult thing to do. Those are flame bars that are not touching the ground, and they wouldn't let me set a fire up there on the ground. This is B-roll footage that wasn't used in Elie Kazan's The Arrangement when he burns his father's house down. And I was only able to shoot one. It dollies into a window that matches the window in the root cellar, and you can hear screaming, and there's a little fire in that. But that entire area, that hill, was made of mulch. And I learned this thing that people couldn't smoke cigarettes up there or cigars because any kind of little flame could go down in that mulch and worm its way up to 2 years and pop up as a forest fire. So they had to be very careful up on that hill.
It will purify Salem's life. And the others will be on the run and on the hunt.
For us.
For us.
Oh, this is it. I didn't see the head of that shot. Maybe a flame barb.
Another one has found us. We have to go further.
That was one of the great things about working in a big studio. You can select things that had been used in other films that just may add some kind of magic to your film. And Susan's dress was Jean Harlow's dress. This particular scene, probably the last shots in the film, were the shot off the crane before they come into this little building, and perhaps after. I think maybe they just walk out the door. So I think the very last shot, but this was it, somewhere scheduled at the very end. And it was, I think, a night shoot, obviously on a sound stage.
We love each other. Forever. That is his promise.
She doesn't have the teeth in right now. I just made it as beautiful as I could.
Kiss me.
You really don't know what's going to happen. I think you know that it can't be what it appears to be. I would describe the horror in this film as thrilling and emotional.
There'll be others.
Do we go now?
There are a lot of good scenes in it. Scenes that I'm really satisfied with, like David Soul after he gets his head broken and Ed Flanders is talking to him in the hospital. I like the scene at the lake. I like the scene when Ed Flanders and David Soul are driving back from the morgue after the staking of the corpse. I find it one piece. Jeffrey Lewis being mesmerized by the grave. The kids floating through the window. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the film as well as I enjoyed making it.